That was the first in-person meeting for Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, if you can believe it, at the ABC News presidential debate. Was there a winner? And is the race any different today as a result of that debate? Let's bring in the front bench to talk about that. Saeed Selvim is the vice president and practice lead of public affairs at National Public Relations. Jamie Allerton is a conservative strategist and the founding partner of Canaptus Limited. Former interim NDP national director Carl Bélanger is with us. He's now the president of Traction Strategies. And you're looking at Marika Walsh. She's a senior, that's Carl. That was Marika Walsh. There she is again. She is a senior political reporter with the Globe and Mail, and she's in Nanaimo covering caucus over there. Hi, guys. Nice to see everybody. We were just talking before we came up, Carl, about watching the debate last night. I said I felt like it kind of flew by. Do you ultimately think there was a winner? I mean, it seems like a naive question at this point and everything, but and if so, why?
Well, I mean, I think there was a clear winner in Kamala Harris. I think she dominated that debate. She set traps. He fell for it. He took the bait again and again and again. But more than having a winner, it's the first time that Donald Trump lost a debate, and he lost badly because he launched all kinds of attacks all over the place. We've heard a few clips. It was not focused. He was ill-prepared. He thought he could handle her the way he handled Joe Biden. Clearly, that didn't work. And the question, though, is, does it matter? How many people were tuning in with an interest in being convinced to vote for one or the other? Or was it just the partisan tuning in? And that's the key question, really.
I wonder, even if it is, Jamie, the partisans who tuned in on that question, I think the key question of whether or not last night mattered. Even if it is just the partisans, do you think his performance is enough to turn off soft Trump voters if they exist at all?
Yeah, I think in terms of like the winner, obviously it was Kamala when you look at what transpired. But I think on the Trump side, if you're like Trump curious and perhaps frustrated after 4 years of the Biden administration, Donald Trump didn't have anything for you. He's very egocentric, always talks about himself, and there wasn't much there. And as an opening salvo, I thought Kamala did okay in terms of outlining some of the policy. I think if she really wants to close the deal with the dozens of swing voters that are left in swing states in this campaign, I think she's going to need to distill her message. She talked about the opportunity economy. Sounds nice, but what does it actually mean for me? What does it mean for the voter? And so I think the Harris campaign has some work to do to distill that, to seal the deal for undecideds. But in terms of if you're a Republican voter on the fence, perhaps like, oh, do I really have to vote for Trump again? You're not going to be motivated to come out and vote for the guy based off what you saw last night.
Yeah, do you think, Saeed, there's going to be another debate, if you had to guess?
Well, given what Trump is kind of alluding to, it looks like there may not be, which could be an indirect admission of defeat, although you would never hear it from him. But I honestly think that if the goal of the debate was to convince undecided or swing voters, definitely the edge would go to Harris. But keep in mind, Trump still has a lot of loyal followers and many followers as well who may not admit to be followers publicly. So some of the things that he said that were inflammatory, that were inaccurate, that were fear-mongering, sometimes that works with his particular base. And that's likely who he was attempting to draw on when he was speaking about some of those things like getting talking about the migrants who are eating pets or executing
They're
babies
not, by the way, just to clarify.
And executing babies after they're born. None of this is true, and he had to get fact-checked many times by the moderators. So when you have such inaccuracies being put out there, especially by a presidential candidate, yes, it is objectively problematic, and it is objectively wrong. But the unfortunate thing is that we're living in a political climate right now where many don't know what's right and what's wrong and what's true. So, the real poll that matters is the one on Election Day. So, time will tell where this goes. But it was a very interesting and borderline chaotic debate last night. But I'd give that one to Harris.
I totally understand Saeed's point, Marika, that a lot of the, for lack of a better word, crazy stuff that we heard from Trump last night would be aimed at motivating people in his base. But I went to the RNC, like his base is motivated. I don't know if they're going to stay home. I think they are motivated to go. But there are like a constituency also of Republicans who aren't necessarily diehard Trumpers. Like, I think he risked a lot by that performance because it's not just your base that tunes into a debate. It is a broader audience. I think the early estimates are somewhere between 60 and 70 million people at this point.
Yeah, I think I see things a little bit differently. I think you're absolutely right, and I mean differently from my other panelists. I think you're absolutely right. He didn't do many things or anything really to win over the soft voters in the middle, the dozens of swing voters, as Jamie said. And I think Kamala Harris did what she needed to in terms of presenting herself to people who do not know her. She didn't face plant. She held her own. But I think the thing that people are forgetting is that people know Trump. He is a known commodity. And nothing he did last night was new or out of the ordinary from what people already expect from him. So while it might not have won him a vote, it's hard for me to see how it actually loses him vote. There was a lot of commentary after the debate on the American networks that seemed to suggest there was some sort of knockout punch that she landed, and I just didn't see that from the chunk that I saw.
I do think that the sentiment around him, Carl, is baked into a degree, but I also think something's happened since he left office, in that people have been able to kind of turn a blind eye, right? Like I'm not paying attention to the degree I was, or I haven't been in the interim, from 2016 to 2020, when we hung on every word in a press conference, when we were constantly confronted with these wild statements. So I wonder if people have become largely agnostic, some, like a small group enough that last night did punch through to them.
Yeah, and this is where I think there was a bit of a concepts of a plan to bring down Harris a little bit when he raised the Biden administration again and again and again, because so far he had not done that. And you could see...
I thought he was going to do that whole debate.
Well,
and he
I think he
didn't
should have
until,
done
like,
it since
hardly
he
the end.
started to run for office, for a presidency. But he had not, and he did yesterday. And that message is punching through. And our response was not great. Like, I'm not Joe Biden. Well, that's a little defensive, when you were the vice president of Joe Biden. So there's a message there. People are still upset about what's happening in the United States. Cost of living is a key issue. Her answers about the plan and everything that she wants to do for the middle class and for the workers, it fell a little short. And so that is what could swing moderate and Republican moderate to go back to Trump, because the best of the opponent is still the opponent, and the worst of my guy is still the best guy we have.
I mean, not that they would ever take my advice, but my advice, Jamie, in that instance would be to their campaign, leverage the exposure you got last night and do like 100 interviews where you can focus on that message and not just spend 90 minutes, getting Donald Trump to successfully accept your bait.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's a bit micro of an issue that kind of jumped out for me last night is how much the two of them spent talking about fracking in Pennsylvania, which to me suggests that the research on both campaigns is saying that this is very much an up for grab vote. Voters have not decided where Kamala Harris stands on fracking. They're obviously being bombarded by ads by what she said when she was the senator from California, and before that, which was definitely not in favor of fracking. And so from an issues management standpoint, the Harris campaign is clearly vulnerable there. But I think when you look at what Kamala had to do last night, I think she did introduce herself to the nation in a way that perhaps people tune in for a debate when they don't, say, watch the DNC convention last month. And when you look at kind of what her path is going forward, I think she really needs to distill down as like how she's going to continue to make things better, make the case. And kind of when you contrast that to what Donald Trump is doing, again, it's all about him now. This is not about making America great again. This is not about forgotten industrial, like mid-U.S. states that are flyover country and forgotten. He's not talking about any of that. It's all himself and the witch hunts and yada, yada. The list goes on. And so I think those kind of middle of the road voters who are apolitical, to the extent that they are undecided, those are still up for grabs. And if Kamala can motivate them to show up in places like Ohio and Pennsylvania, she's probably got enough to win the White House.